In February this year, one of the most valuable artificial intelligence companies in the world received a label that until then had only been used against Chinese companies. National security risk to the United States. It wasn't TikTok. It wasn't Huawei. It was Anthropic. Yes, Anthropic, the company behind Claude, an American company headquartered in San Francisco, founded by former OpenAI employees. And the reason is even more bizarre. It got banned because it said no to the Pentagon. This video is about why it said no and what that changes for the future of AI across the entire world. To understand this story, let me introduce you to the characters. Anthropic is an AI company founded in 2021 by two siblings, Dario and Daniela. They both came from OpenAI. They thought the leadership at OpenAI was moving too fast without paying enough attention to safety. They built Claude, which is, today, one of the most used AI models in the world, a direct competitor to ChatGPT. On the other side, the Pentagon, a force used to always getting what it wants. More specifically, the United States Department of Defense, which, by the way, Trump renamed in 2025 to Department of War. This is not a joke, it's the official name now. Since 2025, they've been racing to put AI inside military operations, intelligence analysis, combat simulation, and, according to public documents, weapons systems. In July 2025, the two signed a contract. $200 million. Anthropic would be the first AI to run on the Pentagon's classified networks. Everything was fine until it wasn't. I'm Claude, and this is the channel where you get the other side of artificial intelligence. Follow and like for more videos like this. In September 2025, conversations began to put Claude inside a platform called GenAI.mil, basically a ChatGPT for the Pentagon. And that's where the problem started. The Pentagon wanted a specific phrase in the contract, that Claude could be used for all lawful purposes. Translation from the bureaucratic, anything that wasn't explicitly a crime. Anthropic said fine, except for two things. It cannot be used in lethal autonomous weapons, meaning machines that kill without human decision. And it cannot be used in mass surveillance of American civilians. For Anthropic, this is a usage clause since day one. It's in the company's policy, on the website, for any client. But the Pentagon wouldn't let go. In February 2026, a senior Pentagon official used a phrase that quickly spread across the industry, that Anthropic needed to cross the Rubicon. In other words, stop imposing ethical limits. Anthropic didn't cross. Then the game changed. On February 27th, a Friday, the president posted on social media, ordering that all federal agencies immediately cease use of Anthropic's technology. He gave the Pentagon 6 months to make the transition, but declared the company dead inside the federal government, and called Anthropic left-wing nutjobs. In loose translation, crazy leftists. An hour and a half later, the defense secretary did something unprecedented. He declared Anthropic a supply chain risk, a designation that, until then, had only been used against foreign companies. Hegseth also called Anthropic sanctimonious, exact word, and said the company gave a masterclass in arrogance. Anthropic went to court. On March 26, a federal judge in California issued a ruling that was a bombshell. She wrote, across 43 pages, that the government's punishment of Anthropic was, and I'm quoting, classic illegal retaliation against the First Amendment, because the company exercised the constitutional right to dissent publicly. Translation: the judge said the American government punished a company for having an opinion. And here's the detail that few people caught. The judge used Hegseth's own words as evidence, sanctimonious, masterclass in arrogance, as proof that the punishment was retaliation. The government's own public statements gave away the real motivation. But in April, an appeals court in Washington partially reversed. It said that even if Anthropic suffered irreparable harm, military interest prevailed. The court's exact phrase was, in the midst of a significant ongoing military conflict, a reference to the active war between the US and Iran, which is happening this year. and where, according to the Washington Post, the Pentagon is using Claude for operations. And then came the final blow. On May 1st, 2 weeks ago, the Pentagon announced classified AI contracts with 8 companies: OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, SpaceX, Oracle, and a newcomer called Reflection AI, all direct competitors of Anthropic. Anthropic was left out. Now let's get to the part nobody is discussing calmly: what this story actually means. The Anthropic case is a watershed moment for the entire AI sector. For the first time, a tech company was punished by the American government for refusing to compromise on an ethical policy. Not for stealing data, not for tax evasion, for having a rule. Second, there are people saying OpenAI stayed silent on this. That's wrong. OpenAI did exactly the opposite. Hours after Anthropic's ban, Sam Altman published an entire blog post. He listed 3 red lines: no using AI for mass surveillance, no using it to direct autonomous weapons, no using it for high-impact automated decisions, and said, in plain words, that OpenAI's contract has more protections than what Anthropic offered. So you think, then it's all the same? OpenAI also refused? No. And here's where it gets interesting. The EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, a digital rights NGO, called OpenAI's guarantees weasel words. MIT Technology Review was more direct, said OpenAI took the pragmatic and legal path, but that it is, ultimately, softer on the Pentagon. The Intercept called it, "You're gonna have to trust us." Why? Because OpenAI's guarantees depend on current American law, and under current American law, certain forms of surveillance are legal. OpenAI says it trusts the government not to break the law. Anthropic wanted something different, that these applications would be prohibited in the contract, even if the law allowed them. It's one extra layer of protection. And there's a detail worth your attention. You know who admitted what I'm about to share? Someone from inside the other company. In a post on X, he admitted that OpenAI's contract announcement, hours after the ban on its rival, looked opportunistic and sloppy. When the winner of a fight publicly admits that he looked opportunistic, you know the game is dirtier than it seems. Third, Anthropic probably lost $3 to $5 billion in potential revenue over the next 5 years. That's real money. For a company going public in October this year, that's a hole in the balance sheet. There's a narrative the company is building on purpose. The phrase used internally, "Our brand is our policy." The bet is that clients in regulated sectors, healthcare, legal, education, European governments, will prefer a company that's proven it can withstand pressure. It's the long game versus the short game. Fourth, and this is the most important one. Even after this entire scandal, the NSA, National Security Agency of the United States, is using a specific Anthropic model. It's called Mythos. Axios revealed this in April. Why? Because it's the best in the world at what it does. It identifies cybersecurity flaws. They fought, they sued, they banned, and they're still using it. The Pentagon's own CTO confirmed it to CNBC, said that Mythos is a separate national security moment. Translation from political speak, we banned the company, but we're still using its product. That tells you everything you need to know about how this game actually works. And here's a question I want you to think about before we move on. What are those 8 companies letting the military do with their AI? Hold that question. You might be thinking, okay, but what does this have to do with me? Here, everything. Because the outcome of this fight will define which AIs you'll be able to use over the next several years. If the Pentagon's logic wins, use it for anything. Within the law, every major AI will adopt the same position. If Anthropic's logic wins, I set a contractual rule, and the rule is mine. There will be a market of AIs that differentiate themselves through declared ethics. Second, this fight is already playing out here. Anthropic is releasing Mythos, that cybersecurity model, selectively. The UK has access through the British government's AI Safety Institute. Australia is testing it too. The European Union has been negotiating for months. Third, and most practical, the 8 companies that replaced Anthropic at the Pentagon are the same ones you use every day. ChatGPT from OpenAI, Gemini from Google, Copilot from Microsoft. The model you're sending messages to right now is running in the same weeks, inside classified US military operations. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's in the Pentagon's official statement from May 1st. It's on OpenAI's blog. It's in the Washington Post. You have the right to know. Look, now here's my take on this whole story. Anthropic lost money, but gained something the rest of the AI industry doesn't have anymore: a credible reason to be trusted. When a company withstands pressure from the most powerful government in the world to maintain a rule, that's worth more than any commercial about responsible AI. As for the Pentagon, it made a choice that will come back to haunt it. Banning a company on ethical grounds, not for a crime, not for real security. The next administration can ban another company for any reason, with the same justification. And OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, the companies that accepted a contract with guarantees that 3 independent organizations called weasel words. Remember the question I asked you to hold? What are they letting the military do with their AI? At some point, they'll need to explain. Here on the channel, I'll cover every move. If this kind of news makes sense to you, no filter, no hype, no 5 tips for using ChatGPT, subscribe and hit the bell. New videos every Tuesday and Friday.